when that this stuff's working, when I just I feel and get enjoyment and contentment out of simple things. Just like I'm content with my life as it is, like nothing needs to change. I notice the birds in the trees. What else? What does that look like for you? How do you know when you're actually achieving that 10% more happiness after a few months or whatever it might be?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do a lot of reflection and a lot of journaling, and I actually have come up with a scale for myself of really quantifying each dimension of my happiness on sometimes month or every other month to really see where I stand. And one thing that I think is worth noting is that it's often just as valuable to know what I'm doing and what my habits are at good times as it is at bad times. Because often when we're in those bad times, we don't know what we're not doing and to be able to, or what changed. Because our minds are just more narrow. We're not thinking about the big picture. We're really just honed in on the shoulder or whatever else. So to be able to look back on what you were doing, what your habits were on when you, those months where you were thriving, and see, oh, I stopped meditating. I don't know how that happened. Or, oh, I stopped hanging out with this friend every Wednesday night for our tennis practices. Or I stopped, going to this session of men's group. I think that can be very valuable to get back into understanding what habits are positive for you and what habits are negative for you. So I definitely am very mindful about journaling. I go through phases where it's every day. I go through phases where it's 3 days a week. But just to keep track of on a whole, where are my emotions in a given day? What's going well, what's not, what made me happy, what did not, what made me uncomfortable, what made me anxious, trying to take something out of that, at the end of every month, looking back a little bit, giving myself, how did I do this month? And at the end of every year, being able to say, this year was better than last year, no question. And now beyond that, I meditate every single day because that's a habit and I can see the benefits of that. And success builds upon itself, and that when you see something's working, and I guess it's very important to take a step back and identify what success looks like for you. Because happiness is this broad word. We all want to be happy, but why do I want to be happy? I want to be happy so that I can A, be as present as possible, B, be as energized as possible when I want to be energized. And I guess a distinction with an energized is I don't want to be 70% of myself 100% of the time. I want to be 100% of myself 70% of the time. So when I want to be this energized person that can offer my energy to other people to help them, I want to optimize that. And I want to also, and this is some people have different thoughts on this word, but I want to self-actualize. I want to become all that I was meant to be. So given that these are the three things that I really care about, how are my actions at any given point supporting that? Am I getting closer to that? And getting closer to that, again, isn't an overnight process. It's building small habits into your life and experimenting to see if they are helping or hurting, reflecting on that. And if they are, keep doing that. If they're not, stop it and do something else. So another thing that's worth noting is that life is a constant experiment. When we stop experimenting, we stop living because we stop growing. So do you have a theory about something that may help you? One of mine, for example, this year was I stopped drinking coffee. I switched to more of teas, matcha, mud water, because I had a theory. And even though I really enjoy the high of coffee in the morning, I did not enjoy the afternoon crash. And I was curious about how my sleep would change if I stopped drinking it. So I gave myself a timeline. I said, for 2 months, I'm going to stop drinking coffee. I'm going to, journal about how I feel every day, the quality of my sleep. And I use a sleep tracker that helps me understand the amount of time I get in REM sleep and deep sleep. And based off of that, at the end of 2 months, I was able to make a conclusion that I actually am getting higher quality sleep when I do not drink as much caffeine in a day. I do not have the mid-afternoon crash. And although I do miss that high in the morning, overall, my energy levels are just more baseline, and that's okay. You know, we don't need, and I think we've talked about this on my podcast or earlier today, where it's not all about the highs. At some points, you just want a high baseline, a good level of contentness. So, you know, experiment with yourself to see what, as a whole, and again, I would challenge you to quantify things, because then you can actually see if things are working or not working and reflect back on where you were in past times, but see your progress. And sometimes all it takes to get into a better place is reflect on where you were a year ago. And even though you may be having a tough day, to be able to say, this tough day isn't nearly as tough as the day I was having a year ago, you know, and that in itself is progress. That makes me feel good about myself. Life is good.